Okay, guys, watch this for Tuesday, March 14th. This is FOMC week, so we got the FOMC announcement on Wednesday. And a lot of times the market just quiet and choppy up until that and then gets kind of goofy afterwards. So keep that in mind. And I'm seeing a little bit of that. You see the nice narrow range in the SPY today. I think we're just already experiencing, I don't want to say the calm before the storm, but, just maybe the quiet leading into FOMC. Having said that, I had a really, really nice call in the room today. I'll go into that in just a second. But IWM, also just like SPY, just is nothing really significant here. But great support. It's sitting at great support. So we'll see what happens on Wednesday. Hopefully we can catch a nice trade or two tomorrow. The watch list I've compiled, ROX. I like the gap up on this thing. I like the story with they're going into all the Walmarts nationwide and so on. Nice support below. It looks better on 15-minute candles. And I pan out a little bit. So you can see the huge gap up on the Walmart news. It really found nice support between 95 cents and $1. Today gapped up. I think they did a presentation this weekend maybe, or maybe today, and held up really well. So looking for this thing to head higher. We'll see. You can tell by the daily candles it almost never puts in a really big day, right? It's one of those narrow range days. It's broken free here recently because of the news, but I'm not sure what it's capable of. We'll see. We'll see if it gives us a low risk setup. ESES, huge pop back here, and then just wandered all the way back down, and then you had kind of a secondary volume spike here, and then now you've got a little bit of a lower high here. So over today's high, like over $1.20, you would think would push it through this 123 and then maybe head higher. Not a great setup, but not terrible. FNSR just goes on bounce watch. It had the gap down on earnings on Friday, and then today never broke its early high either. Going back to the daily. So I don't know. It's not like it's sitting at great support or anything, but with 2 red days in a row, sometimes you get a third day bounce. And I'm a day trader. I'm looking for a bounce in this or a setup in any of these. I don't hold overnight, so keep that in mind. CERC, you had the big pop on Friday. Quiet inside day today. Sometimes you get a third day play where it's right back up. So let's keep our eyes on CERC, CATB, kind of the same as CERC. You had the push up here and then a gap up and a rip. And now, it's well off of its recent highs. Sometimes after the quiet inside day on a much lower volume, it'll turn around and rip higher again. So I want to watch it that way. If you look at it on 15s, you can see the big pop. And, this is basically a partial retracement. When they get to round tripping, they become much less interesting to me. But we haven't round tripped, so I'd like to see this. If it's going to bounce, I'd like to see it bounce tomorrow and hopefully give us a nice setup before it does that, right? RNVA, and there's not much here, but you did have this big pop, and then it's just never gotten a bid since. You had this little bounce here, and then, 3 days lower again. Not in love with it, but if it can stay above 2, maybe it does bounce one of these days. I mean, the reason it's interesting to me is because you had this day that it traded over 17 million shares and had a range from $1.89 to $3.27. That is significant percentage-wise, and then it's just been kind of grinding down quietly lower. So if we get a low risk setup, volume might come into that thing. Certainly worth having on watch. VVUS gapped up the other day, and now you're 3 days lower, almost to a gap fill. But we'll see if it can turn around after hitting the 20-day today. CERU, huge breakout today. This is the one I made a nice call in at the open. Keep in mind, I never call anything at the open. But I did call this after this opening 2-minute candle when it popped up, sold off a bit. When it came back up through the hole number 2, that's one of those inflection points I like with the high of day just above, right? So called that over 201. Dime stop, and it went all the way to, I think, 265. Really nice one. And you know what? It actually held up pretty well, closing close to its high. So that one might have a follow-through day. ETRM, nothing significant here at all, but in after hours, it's trading at 715. All right, so that is all the way right up about here. Not sure what the news was, but this obviously had news in after hours. And if we pan out a little bit further, I don't know. It's certainly significant, gapping all the way up. We don't know where it's going to open tomorrow, but it definitely goes on potential gap watch. Remember, this is the one that ran from $2 to over 30 and has really gone into just sideways chop since. But maybe this gap up will give us one of the setups we look for and get a nice trade. We'll see. Goes on a chart. Doesn't cost me anything to put these on a chart. BLCM I had on watch today. You know, I said maybe over Friday's high, which would have been 13. I said this in a video this weekend, maybe 1335. I would love to tell you that I called that and took it. I didn't. Matter of fact, I didn't even really watch this thing. Let's see, it went up to 1330. So as it got through the high of day here, kind of interesting. But look what happens. It bleeds back lower. That didn't happen till probably an hour. Well, not quite an hour into the session, and then it chopped around. It looked like it was rolling back over during the lunch period. So the real play would have been, I guess, back through the high of day. I never ever got this one though. So I was right about the chart. Wasn't really watching it. And you can see it still only had 627,000 traded. It's back on watch though, because if over today's high now, over 1416, you have the high of this spike, which was 1450. So I'm going to put 1417 and 1451 in my notes. And those are two potential catalysts above. After this pop, it kind of chopped sideways, and now it looks like it's resolving to the upside. So it could easily have a follow-through day. LPCN breaking out of, 3 months worth of trading on decent volume here. So maybe a follow-through day in that one. And lastly, I have OCRX. I'm not in love with this one. This was on watch for today, and this thing just had a seller right at 150, 151 area. This was the intraday, So when they trade like this, I generally leave them alone. But sometimes the very next day they'll break free, right? So I'm going to watch it. Not really in love with this list. I think a lot of it has to do with FOMC on Wednesday. There's usually not great trading leading into that. But, as I just showed you, CERU, something like that, like we called today in the room, it only takes one to make for a good day. All right, so we'll be back at it tomorrow. Have a good night.